It was a stormy night in Fairview when a woman in a soaked red coat burst into Maple Ridge Animal Clinic, clutching a massive German shepherd in her arms. Daisy trembled violently, her breaths shallow, her eyes dim with pain. Her swollen belly warned of a dangerous labor gone terribly wrong. "She's been trying to deliver all night. Nothing's happening," Emily cried, voice shaking. "Please, she's slipping away." Dr. Olivia Harris, still in her blue scrub and white coat, rushed forward. One glance at Daisy's face made her heart pound. Time was running out. As minutes turned into seconds and hope thinned to a thread, what Dr. Harris did next would leave everyone in the clinic stunned. Stay until the end. This is a story you won't forget. Before we begin, hit like, share, and subscribe. And tell me, where are you watching from? Fairview, Colorado, was a place where winter always arrived early. That night, the cold had a way of sinking into the bones, settling heavily over the wooden cabins scattered across the mountainside. Fog clung to the winding roads like a living thing, and the faint glow of porch lights flickered through the drifting mist, as if the entire town were holding its breath. Through this haze, a sleek black SUV tore down the narrow mountain road, its headlights slicing through the stormy darkness. Behind the wheel was Emily Carter, a 35-year-old woman whose beauty was the kind that belonged on magazine covers rather than in emergency midnight drives. Her long blonde hair, usually styled for business galas and charity dinners, was now clinging to her temples from sweat and panic. She wore her signature ensemble, a fitted red dress that hugged her elegant frame, a matching knee-length red coat with subtle tailoring that spoke of wealth, and red high heels that were utterly impractical for the mountains, but perfectly aligned with the life she lived. Emily was the owner of a prestigious horse ranch and a chain of luxury fashion boutiques across Fairview, a woman accustomed to cameras, champagne receptions, and glittering fundraisers. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, her world had shrunk down to the trembling German shepherd sprawled across the back seat. Daisy. Daisy was 5 years old, large for her breed, with a powerful chest and thick brown and black fur now matted with sweat. Her usually sharp amber eyes had become clouded and pained. Her belly was swollen and rigid, trembling with the strain of a labor that had begun hours ago and refused to progress. Each shallow breath she pulled in sounded like it scraped against her ribs, and every whimper made Emily's hands tighten on the wheel until her knuckles turned white. Emily kept glancing at Daisy through the rearview mirror, whispering, "Don't leave me. Your family. Please just hold on." The SUV skidded into the parking lot of Maple Ridge Animal Clinic, a modest but respected building tucked beneath a row of tall pines. Its lights glowed warmly against the cold night, the only beacon of hope for miles. Emily flung open her door, heels slipping on the wet pavement as she rushed around to the back. She lifted Daisy with surprising strength for her slender frame, cradling her as though brute force alone could keep life from slipping away. The clinic door burst open as she stumbled inside. Standing in the entryway was Dr. Olivia Harris, a 38-year-old veterinarian known throughout Fairview for her skill and steady hands. Olivia's appearance reflected a life spent saving animals rather than attending glamorous parties. Her dark brown hair was tied back in a no-nonsense bun, revealing a face shaped by long nights, quiet determination, and a softness she tried her best to hide. She wore her usual uniform, light blue scrubs neatly pressed, a white lab coat thrown over them, and white athletic shoes that had survived far too many emergencies. Olivia was not outwardly glamorous, but there was a quiet strength in the sharp angles of her jaw and the faint laugh lines at the corners of her hazel eyes, eyes that immediately widened when she saw Daisy's condition. "Put her on the table," she ordered, her voice controlled but urgent. Her personality was naturally calm, shaped years ago by losing her first pet during childbirth, a loss that had carved into her a deep resolve never to let another animal die without a fight. Emily laid Daisy on the examination table, her breath hitching as Daisy let out a weak, broken whine. The vet's hands moved quickly, checking reflexes, monitoring vitals, and pressing gently along Daisy's tense abdomen. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor echoed through the room, each interval slower than the last. Olivia nodded to the nurse, Sarah Mills, a soft-spoken woman in her late 20s with curly brown hair and a gentle demeanor. Though a secondary character, Sarah's presence radiated quiet empathy. She had grown up rescuing stray cats and had joined the clinic after leaving a stressful job in a city ER. She quickly prepared the ultrasound probe and spread cool gel across Daisy's belly. The screen flickered to life, revealing 5 small forms curled inside the womb. Olivia's face tightened. 2 are moving, she said softly. 3 aren't. Emily felt her knees weaken, gripping the edge of the table to stop herself from collapsing. Daisy's heart monitor emitted another echoing beep, slower now, hesitant. Then another, and then a much longer pause. The color drained from Olivia's face. She turned to Emily, her voice low. "If we don't operate now, we could lose everything." A nurse placed a surgical tray beside her, the metal instruments gleaming beneath the harsh overhead light. Olivia reached for the scalpel, her steady hand betraying none of the fear coiling in her chest. The operating room lights burst on, flooding the hallway with a cold, sterile glow. Emily pressed her palm to the glass panel. Her reflection, red dress, red coat, terrified eyes, staring back at her. Behind the glass, Olivia stepped toward the table. The heart monitor gave another soft, fragile beep, beep, and then fell frighteningly silent. The operating room at Maple Ridge Animal Clinic glowed under harsh white lights, turning every metal instrument into a blade of cold reflection. Dr. Olivia Harris, still in her light blue scrubs and white lab coat, stood over Daisy's unconscious body with a level of composure that only came from years of walking the thin line between hope and heartbreak. Her brown hair was tied back so tightly it pulled at her temples, but she didn't notice. Her entire being was focused on the German Shepherd lying on the table. Daisy's large frame looked much smaller under the surgical drapes, her belly distended, her breaths shallow even under anesthesia. The heart monitor beside her emitted a slow, fragile rhythm that made Olivia's stomach coil. Behind the glass panel overlooking the room, Emily Carter pressed her palms against the surface, her elegant figure trembling under the weight of fear. Even now, soaked from the storm, high heels discarded, red coat and red dress clinging to her like second skin, Emily looked stunning, but her usual poise had shattered completely. Her makeup was smudged, her blonde hair stuck to her damp cheeks, and her eyes, wide and frantic, were fixed only on Daisy. A nurse stepped into the room, Mark Jensen, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 40s with sandy hair cropped close to his scalp and a carefully trimmed beard. His square jaw and deep-set blue eyes gave him a rugged appearance, but there was gentleness in the way he handled the sterile drapes. Mark had once served as a field medic in the military, a past that left faint scars along his forearms and a quiet patience in his voice. He rarely spoke of his deployments, But everyone at the clinic knew why he moved with such measured confidence during crises. He had seen worse than blood. Vitals dropping but still stable. For now, Mark said, his deep voice steady but low. He handed Olivia the scalpel with a nod. You've got this. Olivia inhaled once, grounding herself. Starting incision. She pressed the blade to Daisy's abdomen, making a careful, practiced cut. The room seemed to shrink into a single point of tension as she worked through layers of tissue. Mark dabbed sweat from her forehead with sterile gauze while Sarah Mills, the gentle nurse from earlier, adjusted the suction tube with her soft brown curls bouncing slightly as she moved. Her warm hazel eyes flicked between Olivia and the monitors, her lips pursed in silent worry. When Olivia reached the uterus, all three medical professionals stiffened. The organ was stretched to its limit, trembling faintly with each weak heartbeat Daisy managed. Olivia touched it gently. We need to move fast. One by one, she delivered the puppies. The first puppy, a tiny German shepherd with slick black fur, was completely motionless, its limbs limp and its body chillingly cold. Sarah sucked in a sharp breath. Emily's muffled sob echoed faintly through the glass. Olivia placed the puppy on a heated towel and immediately began chest compressions, her gloved fingers tapping rhythmic, life-seeking beats over the fragile ribs. Come on. Breathe, little one, she whispered. She bent down and delivered a small breath into the pup's muzzle. Nothing. Another breath. Nothing. Then, a faint squeak. Weak, strained, but alive. Good, Olivia breathed, handing the puppy to Sarah, who placed it under the warming lamp with trembling relief. But the victory lasted only seconds. The second and third puppies emerged just as still, just as silent. The room tensed. Mark's jaw clenched. Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears. Emily's hands curled into fists against the glass. Olivia didn't hesitate. She moved from one tiny body to the next, performing compressions, breaths, warmth, breaths again. Her movements becoming faster, sharper, more desperate each time the monitor beside Daisy emitted another sluggish beep. Sweat dripped from her brow, streaking down her cheek, even as she fought for each fragile life with the precision of a surgeon and the determination of someone who refused to lose another mother on her table. But just as Olivia pressed down on the tiny chest of the third puppy, the heart monitor next to Daisy shrieked. Beep, 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 each one sharper, more frantic than the last. Olivia's head whipped toward the screen. The green line spasmed, then dipped. Daisy's blood pressure plummeted, the numbers falling like stones. Her heart rate's crashing, Mark barked, moving toward the IV pump. Sarah almost dropped the puppy in her hands. We're losing her! Emily slammed both hands against the glass, her red coat flaring like a banner of panic. Don't let her die! Please, don't let her die! Inside the room, the monitor emitted a long, continuous tone. Beep. A sound that sliced through the sterile air and froze everyone mid-motion. Olivia's eyes widened. For a split second, her world narrowed to that single, terrible sound. And then everything happened at once. Emily screaming Daisy's name through the glass. Mark rushing for adrenaline. Sarah clutching the puppy to her chest. As Olivia hovered between Daisy and the newborns, her hands trembling, torn between saving the mother or the lives she had just pulled into the world. For a split second, the world inside the operating room seemed to stop, caught between the flat, unbroken tone of the monitor and the frantic breaths of the people who refused to give up. Dr. Olivia Harris, her light blue scrubs soaked with sweat, and her white coat streaked faintly with Daisy's blood, froze between two lives, the fading mother on the table and the nearly lifeless puppy beneath her hands. Her hazel eyes narrowed, and the quiet resolve that defined her snapped into place. She left the tiny puppy in Mark's waiting hands and lunged toward Daisy. Years ago, Olivia had lost her first shepherd during a difficult labor, a grief that had shaped her entire career. That memory now burned fiercely inside her, fueling every move she made. She adjusted the oxygen mask, tapped the monitor settings, and shouted, "Epinephrine! Now!" Mark Jensen, the broad-shouldered former field medic with the sandy hair and battle-weathered steadiness, slammed the syringe into her palm without hesitation. Mark's deep-set blue eyes tightened with focus. The scar that ran across his left hand, earned during a rescue mission overseas, twitched as he steadied the IV line. Sarah Mills, the gentle nurse with soft curls and warm hazel eyes, stepped back only long enough to cradle the unmoving puppy to her chest, whispering encouragement as if the newborn could hear her. Outside the glass, Emily Carter, dressed in her soaked red coat and the fitted red dress clinging to her trembling body, collapsed into a chair. She no longer looked like the glamorous business owner who graced magazine covers across Colorado. Her carefully maintained blonde hair was tangled, mascara smudged in dark streaks down her cheeks, and her usually steady voice had dissolved into soft, desperate murmurs. "Please, Daisy, please don't go," she whispered, with her forehead pressed to the cold glass. Olivia injected the epinephrine and began chest compressions on Daisy with controlled force. Her forearms flexed with each press, sweat dripping into the collar of her coat as she fought with mechanical precision and raw fear. Mark monitored the vitals, calling out numbers under his breath. Pressure still low, heart rate nearly absent. Sarah's voice cracked as she watched. "Come on, girl. Fight." And then, a flicker. On the monitor, a single spike rose through the flat line, then another. The long, unbroken tone stuttered, fractured, became a rhythm, weak, unpredictable, but a rhythm. "We've got her!" Olivia gasped, relief hitting her so hard her knees nearly buckled. Emily's sob of gratitude echoed faintly through the glass. But Olivia's work was far from over. She pivoted back to the puppies. The second puppy had begun to twitch in Mark's large, careful hands. Its pitch-black fur glistened under the overhead lights as it let out a strangled, trembling squeak, the sound of life clawing its way back from the edge. The third puppy, limp, moments before, suddenly jerked under Sarah's gentle rubbing, its chest spasming once before settling into a fragile, breathing rhythm. "That's it. There you go," Sarah whispered with trembling relief. The fourth puppy tested the limits of everyone's resolve. Olivia worked on it for long, punishing minutes, far longer than the others. She pressed, breathed, pressed again. Mark shook his head once, not in doubt but in a medic's grim recognition of the line between possible and impossible. "Olivia, not yet." Her voice cracked. "Not this one." And then, impossibly, a whisper of sound, a soft, whimpering gasp, fluttered from the small body beneath her hands. Olivia exhaled sharply, nearly laughing from the shock of relief. "There you are, little fighter." Only one remained, the smallest, the weakest. The fifth puppy lay motionless, hardly more than a warm weight in her hand. Emily, watching through the glass, pressed her fingers to her lips, shaking. Her red coat had slipped from one shoulder, revealing the trembling bones beneath her skin. "Please," she mouthed. "Please save them." Olivia lowered her mouth to the puppy's muzzle and delivered tiny breaths, her chest rising and falling quickly as if sharing her own life with its tiny form. She rubbed it gently, rhythmically. "Breathe. Come on. Breathe." The puppy twitched. A tiny, fragile squeak pushed through its throat. Emily burst into tears. Under the glowing heat lamp, all 5 newborn German shepherds huddled together, weak but undeniably alive. Olivia stood still for a moment, staring at them, her breath shuddering. Sarah wiped her eyes. Even Mark's stoic jaw softened, and then Daisy was ready to be sewn up. Olivia closed the incision carefully, hands steady even as exhaustion threatened to drag her down. Daisy was moved to the recovery room, her large body wrapped in clean blankets. Emily sat beside her, still in her red dress and coat, now draped haphazardly around her shoulders. She stroked Daisy's ear with trembling fingers. "You did it," she whispered. "Open your eyes, please." Hours passed. Neon lights hummed overhead. The puppies slept under warm lamps. Daisy's breathing evened out. For a moment, everything felt safe. But as dawn crept across the horizon, casting pale gold across the clinic floor, Olivia glanced at the monitor. Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. She stepped toward Daisy. "Daisy?" No reaction. Daisy's eyes closed fully. Her chest rose only once, then stilled. Emily grasped Daisy's paw, her lips trembling. "Don't leave me, please!" The world dimmed, right as the monitor began to slow. A full week had passed since the night Daisy's heart nearly slipped away, and Maple Ridge Animal Clinic had finally begun to breathe again. The tension that once clung to every hallway had faded into something softer, something almost warm. Daisy, now stitched and healing, rested comfortably in the recovery ward. Her thick brown and black fur had regained a faint sheen, and her eyes, once clouded with pain, glimmered with the gentleness of a mother who had fought her way back from the edge. Around her, the 5 newborn German shepherd puppies stumbled across the blanket in clumsy zigzags, their tiny legs still uncertain but determined. Their fur had darkened into glossy patches of black and tan, their squeaks echoing across the room like a chorus of new beginnings. Emily Carter visited daily, always in her signature red, the fitted red dress that hugged her graceful frame and the long red coat that swept behind her like a banner of devotion. The severe blonde bun had returned, framing her face with disciplined elegance, but her demeanor around Daisy had softened dramatically. Emily, known across Fairview as a confident businesswoman and owner of luxury fashion boutiques, knelt beside the recovery pen each day with the tenderness of a mother. She brought red silk blankets, "So she won't feel cold," she insisted, and tiny plush toys shaped like horses from her own ranch. Dr. Olivia Harris, steadfast as ever in her light blue scrubs and white coat, made her rounds each morning, sneakers squeaking softly against the tile floors. The sharp, professional lines of her face had relaxed over the week, though exhaustion still lingered beneath her hazel eyes. Healing Daisy had soothed an old wound inside her, the memory of the shepherd she once lost in a delivery gone wrong. Watching Daisy thrive now felt like reclaiming a piece of her own past. Sarah Mills, the warm-hearted nurse with soft brown curls, continued tending to the puppies. Her gentle voice, calm, patient, endlessly encouraging, filled the ward as she bottle-fed whichever pup needed a bit more help. And Mark Jensen, the rugged former field medic with a quiet demeanor and scars along his forearms, handled Daisy's IV lines and checkups with the precise hands of someone who knew the fragility of life too intimately. The clinic found its rhythm again. Then, one rainy morning, that rhythm broke. The storm rolled into Fairview with a hush of cold mist, turning the pine trees outside into shadowy silhouettes. Sarah stepped outside to bring in a supply delivery and nearly tripped over a soggy cardboard box left at the clinic's front door. It was small, barely the size of a shoebox, and patched with wet tape. A faint sound came from inside. Sarah's eyebrows pinched with concern as she carried the box carefully into the ward. "Dr. Harris, you'll want to see this," she said softly. Olivia peeled back the wet cardboard. Inside was a trembling German Shepherd puppy, no more than a week old. Its fur patchy, its ribs faintly visible beneath thin skin. Its tiny eyes were squeezed shut, and its whimpers were sharp, pained, desperate. "Poor thing," Olivia murmured. "Abandoned." Emily approached, the red coat swirling behind her like a storm. "Is it hurt?" "Malnourished," Olivia said, "and cold. Without a nursing mother, it might not survive." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. But Daisy heard it all. The recovering mother struggled to her feet, wincing slightly, and hobbled toward the box as though pulled by instinct older than memory. Her nose dipped inside. She breathed in the scent of the quivering stranger. The puppy let out a broken cry. Daisy responded with a low, soothing rumble, an unmistakable maternal call. Olivia blinked. "Daisy, sweetheart, that's not your puppy." But Daisy didn't care. The weakened mother nudged the box with her muzzle, her tail giving a faint, fragile wag. She gently lifted the tiny creature with her mouth and carried it to her blanket, settling down with deliberate care. Carefully, she curled her body to make space, nudging the new puppy toward her belly. Her 5 pups, confused but curious, sniffed at their new sibling. The newcomer hesitated, just a heartbeat, before inching closer and pressing its small body into Daisy's warm fur. The room fell silent. Emily covered her mouth with a trembling hand. After everything she's been through, she still found room for one more. A broken laugh escaped her, shimmering with tears. Even Mark, who rarely showed emotion, let out a long breath, his shoulders softening. For a few hours, peace reigned again. Emily left to prepare Daisy's homecoming at her ranch. She wanted everything perfect for Daisy and her now 6 puppies. The sky outside darkened by late afternoon, clouds gathering like an omen. Winds picked up. Rain hammered the windows. Lightning forked across the treetops. By nightfall, Fairview was swallowed by a violent storm. Inside the clinic, lights flickered. Olivia, finishing paperwork in the dim office, looked up sharply when the power sputtered. A second later, everything went black. Emergency lights blinked on, weak, yellow, trembling. In the recovery ward, Mark's voice cut through the gloom. "Dr. Harris! Daisy's monitor just switched to battery. Looks unstable." Olivia sprinted down the hall, her sneakers slapping the wet tile. Sarah stood frozen by the pen, 6 puppies huddled against Daisy as the heart monitor beside her flickered ominously. The green line grew thinner, weaker. Olivia pressed her hand to Daisy's chest. "Not again. Stay with me, girl." Thunder roared. Rain battered the windows. And far away, on the road leading back to the clinic, Emily Carter's red coat flared behind her as she ran through sheets of rain, unaware of the crisis unfolding in the storm-lit recovery room. The final beep thinned into a whisper, and the cartisol monitor's glow dimmed to a trembling line. The emergency lights bathed the recovery ward in a weak amber glow, casting long shadows that swayed every time thunder rumbled outside. Dr. Olivia Harris, exhausted beyond words, leaned over Daisy's unmoving body. Her light blue scrubs were wrinkled, stained with sweat and remnants of the long night, and her white lab coat, usually crisp, now sagged heavily from hours of frantic work. Her hands trembled as she positioned them on Daisy's chest once more. Every compression sent a pulse of fear through her muscles, but she didn't waver. Memories flashed. Years ago, another German Shepherd, another operating table, another night where she wasn't fast enough. The regret had been a ghost following her ever since, but not tonight. Tonight she refused to lose another mother. She whispered through clenched teeth, "Not this time. You hear me? Not this time." The storm howled against the clinic windows. The 6 puppies, barely old enough to hold their heads up, huddled together near Daisy's belly, sensing the frantic urgency in the room. Their tiny whimpers rose and fell like frightened heartbeats. Suddenly, the clinic door slammed open, blowing in a gust of cold rain. Emily Carter, drenched to the bone, stumbled inside. Her iconic red dress clung to her shivering frame, the long red coat dripping puddles onto the floor. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her blonde bun had fallen apart, and her high heels were long abandoned. She looked nothing like the powerful mogul known across Fairview. In that moment, she was simply a woman terrified of losing her family. She ran to the recovery pen, collapsing beside Daisy. "No, no, please!" she gasped, grabbing Daisy's paw with both hands. "You're not allowed to go anywhere. Not now. You have 6 little ones who need you. And I—" her voice cracked. "I need you too." The desperation in her voice filled the room like a prayer, and then, like the softest reply, the monitor gave a tiny beep. Olivia froze, mid-compression. Emily lifted her head wide-eyed. Another faint beep followed, then another. The green line twitched, rose, dipped, then rose again. Weak, fragile, but undeniably alive. Olivia's breath escaped her in a near sob. "Yes, yes, that's it, girl. Come back." Daisy's chest moved, just a shallow rise, but more than enough to spark life into the puppies, who wiggled toward her warmth. Emily bowed over Daisy, forehead pressed to the fur between Daisy's ears, whispering over and over, "Good girl, good girl." And just like that, the storm outside began to break. The thunder softened, the rain slowed. A pale gold light seeped into the ward as dawn finally reached Fairview. When the sun rose enough to pass through the trees and into the clinic windows, the scene it illuminated looked like a painting of survival. A weary veterinarian in blue scrubs, a woman in a soaked red dress kneeling on the floor, a German Shepherd mother breathing again, and 6 puppies gathered like tiny guardians against her body. That dawn felt like a promise. The worst had passed. Weeks moved swiftly after that miraculous morning. Fairview's landscapes transitioned into soft greens and warm breezes. The Carter Ranch on the hillside regained its vibrant life. Red flowers blooming along wooden fences, white-painted stables gleaming under the sun, and horses grazing lazily across lush fields. Daisy, fully recovered, returned to the ranch with Emily. Her fur shone under the sunlight, and her walk had the confident rhythm of a mother who had fought death and won. The 6 puppies, now energetic, stumbling balls of mischief, chased each other across the porch and through the grass with uncontainable joy. Emily, radiant once more in her flowing red dress and red coat, lifted the smallest puppy, the abandoned one Daisy had adopted, and held her against the sky. The puppy's fur had filled out beautifully, her eyes warm and trusting. Emily smiled. "Her name will be Hope," she said softly, "because she reminded me that after everything we lose, love still finds a place to grow." Dr. Olivia Harris visited often. Still in her crisp blue scrubs and white coat, she looked strangely at home among the ranch's open fields, a quiet symbol of the night she had fought harder than ever before. The faint lines around her eyes had softened, as though Daisy's survival had stitched shut the old wound she carried for years. She watched the puppies tumble over each other, a rare smile lighting her face. "The biggest miracles," she said, "don't always happen in bright hospitals. Sometimes they happen in quiet little rooms, with a dog who refuses to give up, and a woman in red who believes her family is worth fighting for." As the sun dipped behind the hills, painting Fairview in shades of orange and gold, Emily stood beside Daisy with the 6 puppies circling their legs. The soft wind tugged at her red coat, the ranch glowing with life, warmth, and the promise of beginnings. This was no longer just recovery. This was rebirth. And as the light faded into dusk, the story found its final form. Broken hearts mended, hope reborn, and a family stitched together by love, courage, and the refusal to let go. Sometimes, the greatest miracles don't arrive in flashes of lightning or grand moments that shake the world. Sometimes, they come quietly, through a heartbeat that returns when everyone has given up, through a mother dog that chooses love instead of fear, through a stranger who opens her home to the smallest life in need. And maybe, just maybe, those moments are gentle reminders from God, whispering to us that hope is never as far away as we think. In our everyday lives, we rush, we worry, we struggle with burdens no one else sees. But then a story like Daisy's touches our hearts and reminds us that faith still matters, love still heals, and God still works in ways we may never fully understand. If this miracle moved you, if you believe love can save and that God watches over the smallest creatures and the deepest human aches, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Share this story so more hearts can feel this miracle. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue spreading hope, faith, and the gentle blessings that God places in our path. May God bless you, your loved ones, and every soul who believes in second chances. And may every sunrise bring you the quiet miracles you didn't even know you were praying for.